Welcome to the Financial Aid Series, Part 1, Financial Aid Basics and the FSA ID. What is financial aid? Financial aid provides funds to help pay for post-secondary educational expenses. Although it is for the student, it is based on student and family resources. It is available at most post-secondary institutions, whether they be private, public, or technical schools. First, there are some definitions that you should know. COA, or cost of attendance, is based on direct fees as well as indirect fees. Direct fees include tuition and fees, housing, and food. Indirect fees are things such as transportation costs, books, supplies, and equipment, loan fees, and personal living expenses. These are all things that should be able to be found on the institution's website. The cost of all of these added together is equal to the cost of attendance. The Student Aid Index, or SAI, is the number that is calculated based off of all of the information that's entered into the FAFSA. There's a federal formula that's used to be able to create this SAI, which was previously known as an EFC, or expected family contribution. The need analysis formula is when you're taking the parent contribution, which is a mix of the income and assets of the parent, along with the student contribution, which is also a percentage of income and a percentage of assets. Combine those, and that is what the SAI is. Note that the SAI is the same for the student for that year, no matter which type of school the student goes to, whether it be a public school, a private school, or a technical institution. But that SAI is the number that will be used by schools to determine what type of aid they're eligible for, as well as by the state and federal government to see if they're eligible for need-based funding. And last, financial need. That is the COA, cost of attendance, minus the SAI, or Student Aid Index. The FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, is the form that the student completes to be able to create that SAI. The FAFSA can be completed online at studentaid.gov, and we'll talk more about that in a future video. Once the student submits the FAFSA online or via paper, the SAI is calculated, and instantly the student can see what that number is. Results of that FAFSA are then sent to the schools of the student's choice, and then the school may follow up with the student with additional documents that are needed and determines the type of aid that the student is eligible for. Offers are then sent to the student when the school is ready to be able to send those out. What are the types of financial aid that the student is eligible for? There's basically 3 types of aid. The first would be scholarships and grants. This would be free money that does not need to be repaid. The second would be loans. Loans are types of money that the student can borrow. They must be paid back, and some of them will have interest attached to them. And student employment. Student employment is a job, just like if a student is working at the local ice cream place or McDonald's or Quick Trip. These are funds that need to be earned, and then the student can use those funds how they see fit. So let's take a closer look at these types of financial aid. So first, the free money, grants and scholarships. When the student completes the FAFSA at studentaid.gov, they will be able to determine if they're eligible for the federal aid. The federal aid would be such as Pell Grant and SEOG. The student doesn't have to do anything extra apart from filing that FAFSA. If the student is from Wisconsin and the student is attending a school in Wisconsin, then filing the FAFSA will also be able to determine if they're eligible for the Wisconsin grant. Note that these funds are limited, and the student will want to make sure that they file the FAFSA as soon as possible. The state of Wisconsin also has a variety of other grants that they offer, and some of these grants the student will have to apply for, and sometimes the school will be able to determine who is eligible for them. So filing the FAFSA is the first step, and then the student can also visit that website to see if they're eligible for other types of state funding. Note, students that are from other states and are going to be attending other states should also file their FAFSA quickly to be able to see if they're eligible for those state grants. And last would be institutional and college-sponsored programs. When the student applies at that college and files the FAFSA, the student will be determined to see if they're eligible for different types of institutional grants and scholarships. And sometimes a student would want to be able to look on the website to see if there's other types of scholarships that they're eligible for as well. Next, moving on to student loans. So federal student loans, the student would have to file the FAFSA for to be able to be eligible for that. A student loan is just that. It is a loan that is in the student's name. The student is the borrower, and the student would be the person that would be paying that loan back. For the federal student loans, they come in two types, subsidized and unsubsidized, the difference being if there is interest accruing or not. In a subsidized loan, interest does not accrue while the student is in school or in a grace period, whereas an unsubsidized loan, interest does accrue while the student is in school and in a grace period. They have the same interest rate, which is typically a little bit lower than a private loan, and the student does not need to make payments on them while they're enrolled at least half time in school. They also do not require a cosigner, but they do have an origination fee. The interest rates and the origination fees can be found online, and they change each year. Private student loans are those types of loans that are offered through a lender, and those lenders, lender lists can usually be found on the school's website. These are types of loans where a cosigner is typically required for the student. Some have payment requirements while the student's enrolled, and the interest rate depends on the cosigner's credit score. Other types of loans would include parent loans. There's a federal Parent Plus loan, and there are private parent loans. The federal Parent Plus loan, the student does also have to have a FAFSA filed in order for the parent to be eligible. Interest rates work similar. They're announced in June. There's an origination fee on them, and payments could be deferred while the student is enrolled. A new law that's going into effect for 26-27 is that for parents that are borrowing for their student, there is a $20,000 maximum per year limit that parents can borrow for their student, with a $65,000 maximum aggregate loan limit per parent per student. For private parent loans, those work very similar to student. Interest rates are based on the credit score. Many do not have fees attached to them, but you would want to take a look at the different disclosures with those private parent loans. And then finally, the work study, which I briefly talked about, which is just a job on campus. Different institutions have different rules about their jobs, who's eligible for them, and how many hours they can work. But they do work just like any other job where the student does have to work to be able to earn those hours, to earn those dollars, to be able to get those if they're going to use them towards their tuition or not. So how do the student determine their eligibility for all of this aid? Typically, it gets started with the FAFSA form, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, which FAFSA stands for, and it opens on October 1st of each year. But to be able to start the FAFSA, the student and a parent does need to have an FSA ID. And you can create that FSA ID now. You don't have to wait for October 1st to roll around. And like I said, a student needs to have an FSA ID and the contributors need to. So who is a contributor? I'll talk about that in a second. But you can go to studentaid.gov and you can create that FSA ID. You do need your social security number to get that started, and you need to have an email. Each person needs to be able to use a different email. So parents and students do not use a family email. Each one needs to have a separate one. Users that don't have a social security number, you can also still create an FSA ID. The contributors are the people that are putting information into the FAFSA. So if you have questions on who should be creating something within the FAFSA or who should be a contributor on the FAFSA, it does explain that when you're doing the FAFSA. So the student starts the FAFSA and then they have to supply information as to who will be contributing to it. Do both parents need to have their own FSA ID? That depends. It depends on how the taxes were filed. Sometimes just one parent needs to, sometimes both parents need to. And in some cases, there might not be any parent that's contributing. So there's more explanations on who the contributor is. But if you have one parent that's going to be on there, then both the student and the parent needs to have their own FSA ID. And in order for the FAFSA to be complete, you have to have the student complete their section, sign it and turn it in, and the parent needs to have completed their section, sign it, and turn it in. So it's kind of like two pieces of the puzzle, both having to fit together and be completed before that FAFSA is complete. So thank you for joining the first series in our video series about the FAFSA. And the next in the series is step-by-step instructions to filing the FAFSA.